All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 326 of the Health Detective Podcast. And today we are taking a bit of a different route. I always love when we get to do these types of interviews where it's focused around the inventions of people or just the products that they sell or things that they've created. It's just a little bit different than some of our stories where it's purely about the health journey, although our guest Mike actually has some of that too. So we'll be diving into a few different things today, and this is definitely one. I'll say this a few times as some of you guys come in. Please feel free to ask questions for this one. I'll probably, do a normal style of interviewing for 20 to 30 minutes. And then if we have questions, I'll happily prioritize them from the chat. So feel free to ask as we're going along. And then I will, again, answer or ask those rather as time goes on here. So Mike Feldstein is the founder of Jaspr and an air quality expert. He leveraged his experience in wildlife restoration and air quality consulting to start Jaspr, a premium air purifier company which is made to innovate in air science and technology. His purpose is to protect air quality and boost human health using the latest in air quality science and tech. Mike, welcome to the Health Detective Podcast.
Hey, man. Happy to be here.
Cool. So we had talked really quick beforehand just to mention the health side of this because, yes, a lot of what happened with Jaspr was because of your work, but also you've dealt with your own things. So we'll touch on that too. I like to start then with what were your health symptoms like and when did they first begin?
So I have two things. One was like a very acute experience back in 2018, which is not the inspiration for the company by any stretch, but it was a personal health experience. So my wife and I were renting a home in 2018 in Canada, and we didn't realize when we checked out the house for rent, but it had a lot of mold, a lot of mold. I'm not just talking about mycotoxins in the air. I mean like visible black mold behind the couches, on the windows. The condensation was really high in the HVAC system, like full out Stachybotrys black mold. I think just, with all the furniture and air fresheners, we didn't really notice it when we were quickly needing to find a house to rent, and it wasn't a particularly good time to be a tenant. So like you had 2 seconds to make an offer and in and out. It was like a competitive rental market, if that's a thing, which it was. So we moved in and then we're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of mold. Thank God I happened to own an air testing company and a mold restoration business before that. So I was pretty well suited to handle it, but I couldn't like go and do a lot of demolition at this house. So what ended up happening was I tested the air and there was a lot of mold. So it validated my, usually if you smell mold, it's because there is mold. What we call musty is usually just moldy. And if you can smell it, it's because it's there. I've never been into an environment where it smells moldy and then did lab testing and was proven wrong or surprised. So for the first time ever living in this home, I was getting really bad symptoms, rashes, hives, bumps, difficulty sleeping. And the scariest of all was exercise-induced asthma. So like if I would even just go for a jog down the street, I'd be like on the floor, like completely wheezing, not able to breathe at all. And it was terrifying. And I'm like, did I just develop asthma? Like, I'm saying this now on the other side of this, but then I'm like, am I now asthmatic? Did I just get adult onset asthma? Shoot. Heard about this before. I didn't really connect it to the mold at the time, but this was right around the time when I was developing Jaspr in 2018. So within a couple of weeks of living, maybe like a month of living in the home, I had several air purifiers in the unfinished basement that were running to test the air. And the cool thing was, as they got running, I didn't realize, but our symptoms completely regressed and we were fine. And then I tested the air in the house again and the house was mold free. We did a light surface clean, no remediation. Luckily, I had a bunch of air purifiers in my basement and that dealt with it. But one day the power went out and we came home. We didn't know the power went out. The clocks were flashing, but we didn't check the basement. All the air purifiers were off and instantly we both blew up. All of our symptoms came back. Almost like within an hour or two, went to the basement, turned all the air purifiers back on, and by the next morning we were okay. So that was a very acute situation, and I share that story because 99% what I've seen in my air quality and restoration and air consulting, I've typically seen mold be a chronic slow burn, not the kind of thing where you have these very acute on-off symptoms. More of a slow problem for the onset and then a slow resolution. So this was an acute example, which I don't normally see. And then the other one is the psoriasis, which is honestly like, we're doing pretty good right now. We're doing pretty good. And typically, if I find myself drinking low quality water, breathing bad air, eating bad food, or super high stress, any of those factors, or like if I was at a hotel and I used bad skincare products, almost any stressor just inflames this like crazy. So my own personal, honestly, I call it a gift because I'm sure if this is showing up on the outside, there's a lot more happening on the inside. So this is like my check engine light that I know I'm doing good. If I'm eating clean, drinking clean, breathing clean, moving, and this has been a personal journey of making sure I'm living a good, healthy lifestyle. So those are my two personal for me examples, and then thousands of more of family and friends and clients and things like that.
Sure. Well, I'll go over the psoriasis one real quick because I actually really appreciate how you look at it, because I think sometimes it's very easy for many of us in this space to get into a victim mindset, especially a lot of our guests have had like 7, 8 conditions. I get it, man. I'm not saying that it's fair. I've been through that myself, but I will tell you this. For me, I'll call it like a primary symptom. Like one of the first things that happens is I get acne. I would break out. So I had it severely at one point. Thankfully, I don't have that anymore. But if I push my body or if I'm traveling endlessly and really doing things out of the ordinary, I'll get something here and there. And I thank God. I'd rather have that because it's motivating, right? I still don't want the breakout, but the breakout's not going to kill me. And it's letting me know, hey, Ev, we need to back this off. I'd much rather that than my first symptom be, oh, surprise, you've been developing a tumor for all these years. You felt fine, but now this happens. So I think we can change the way that we view some of these health symptoms, but that's besides the point. I think the acute symptoms that you had, you're correct in your analysis. I think it is kind of rare. I felt like such a hypocrite. It was almost like I needed the lesson because in our graduate group at FDN, Mike, we have every single day someone is talking about mold 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it was talked about so much that admittedly, I kind of developed this mindset of, is this really that big of a deal? Are people really experiencing this? Sure enough, my fiance and I, in October of 2022, move into an apartment, and there was the slow burn that you described. It was so subtle, in fact, that I didn't connect this until almost the very end of us being there. Because what happened is I'd get so congested at night, I would literally wake up choking, and then I'd scare the hell out of her because I guess I stopped breathing for a second. Of course, your body wakes you up, or my brain perceived me as not breathing, whatever. But it was really, really scary. And then finally, we find it in the vents, but we couldn't even smell it. And so you're talking about a situation where you could smell it. It's behind stuff. My friends just went through that situation. I'm like, holy crap, I can't even imagine it being so bad that when you do find it, you could visibly see it in like large amounts like that. That's got to be terrible. So just to be clear then, so I have the story right, you were in the business of mold, let's say, prior to even the Jaspr thing, correct?
Oh, way before. That was the reason I got into it, was of doing floods, fires, mold restoration, and air quality consulting for a long time. That happened way before. I never thought I would get into the air business or creating products at all. No, I was deeply in restoration, disaster cleanup, and air consulting.
Okay, well, I have to ask that one question, I suppose, before the Jaspr thing, as much as I want to talk about that. How did you choose that career path? Because it doesn't seem like everyone wakes up every day and says, all right, I want to do disaster restoration. That sounds like a hell of a job. So what prompted that?
That's a good point. Well, several years before that, I was in online marketing in 2010. And I happened to have a few friends who are working for mold restoration companies. I'm living in Austin, Texas now. At the time, I was in Ontario, and I had a lot of friends in the business. But I also, in the marketing side, I had a lot of clients who were in the business. So I got to see it from the business side first, and just kind of how unorganized a lot of them were. And it seemed like, honestly, an interesting career path and an interesting business. It's like, as someone who enjoys renovations and stuff, you're always trying to get perfect tile work and perfect carpentry, and it's almost impossible to actually get a result that the customer is really happy with. But like, if you could take a sick house and make it a not sick house, I saw it kind of like being a surgeon of the home, and that was like a where I don't have to go to medical school for all these years, and I could do really meaningful work. And the air sciences just kind of resonated with me. Um, but it started from just like local mold removal stuff. I had a couple clients that were in Texas and Florida and around the US. And then I started the business in Toronto. I partnered up with another restoration business. I would handle the marketing and they would handle the jobs. And then it just kind of evolved to a much deeper relationship where I started my own business, started just binging courses on air quality and mold and flood disaster stuff. And honestly, in this case, the education was a joke. They were usually 2 to 3 day classes to be certified in mold, even asbestos abatement, incredibly toxic stuff. It was a few days. I'm like, how are they certifying people so quickly? So that's why I started by partnering up with people who had been in the business for a while first to get reps, be in the homes, see it firsthand. And then the Calgary flood happened in 2013, which was the biggest flood in Canadian history. You're talking in the downtown core, water was up to the 3rd and 4th level of buildings. Like downtown was like a lake. The river completely overflowed. It was intense. So I kind of got thrown into the fire, thrown into the flood, put myself in the deep end. So after just doing a bit of attic mold remediation, I was instantly thrown this like catastrophic flood event. And floods led to hailstorms, which led to fire, which just led to so many different situations. And then when you are in the flood and fire business, you're working with a lot of environmental consultants to test for mold, test for asbestos, ensure that the structure is adequately dry before you do rebuilding. So then that kind of led me to the air quality side of things. So yeah, it was totally unplanned. I never thought I would have got into restoration or environmental sciences or anything like this at all. It was totally random, but I'm very glad that it happened.
Okay, well, that's an epic story. I was able to visualize to some degree when you talked about the flooding. We live right now about it's probably like 1,000 feet above this river that you just go out of the road. We can be there in 1 minute if we drove together, and it always floods. Like I can't believe people live there because it is beautiful, but it's not like an if, it's like a when type of thing. Like, you know how like there's certain places that have a volcano, but it's like maybe once every 5,000, and damn, if it happened, that just sucks. This is like, okay, if you live there for 10 years, you're going to get flooded, and they know this, but it's beautiful. So I guess that's why. And I've seen some of the markers like on the rocks. They'll say like, this is what happened in 1955. I've actually seen it cover like half of a normal building, but I'm like 3 or 4 stories up, covered in water. Like what?
And 6, so underground, the underground parking lots would go as far as 6 stories deep in Calgary. And it was all the way, not only was it a few stories up, but after that, the parkades, 6 stories deep, were filled to where water was rushing out of the parking lot on street level, but it was 6 stories deep. And there was cars there and trucks there and all kinds of stuff. So our first step was we had to pump the water out from a 6-story deep underground parking lot. So this was like a wild situation. So I'm quite grateful because, and we had, oh, by the way, all the power's turned off. So you had to do everything with generators, bottled water, porta potties. We had no infrastructure to do it. It wasn't like your house was flooded and we have all the infrastructure and the sewage and the piping. When the city is flooded and the military has everything blocked off and checkpoints, you kind of have to bring everything. So I'm glad that I got to see the worst events, because a lot of restoration companies, they're dealing with a pipe burst and a roof leak and that everyday stuff. But being thrown into these, like, we weren't that kind of company. We did not do the regular local stuff. We were traveling. So Houston hurricanes, wildfires in California, we would go to the biggest disasters and restore those. We were only in the catastrophe business. We weren't in your regular abatement business at all. So the exposure to critical environments was accelerated growth and accelerated learning.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So now I get to the part, well, this was all awesome, but this is the part that I really wanted to talk about, Jaspr. So you come up with this, there's 1,000,001 air purifiers on the market, and then we have someone like you with your experiences and background coming up with this. And this was highly recommended by Jason of Got Mold. And that is not a dumb guy. That was a guy that probably gave one of the best podcasts we've ever done on here. And we actually brought him on twice because of it, and spoke extremely highly of your company and what you guys are doing. So when you went into this and you know that you have all the competition in the world, what did you put into Jaspr that makes this unique and different?
So I told you the flood story. Honestly, I'll tell you the fire story, which will really make a lot more sense. It's because, like, engineering and design and product stuff, that's just specs and trial and error and figuring stuff out. It was if I never was in the disaster business, I would have never approached it like this. So in 2016 was the biggest wildfire in Canadian history in a town called Fort McMurray, Alberta. For context, it's Edmonton, Alberta, is 5 hours away. And Fort McMurray is like Alaska. It's one of those places where it's like freezing cold and it's like bright till 4 a.m. in the morning and super remote. And it's an oil town. So Fort McMurray wildfire, this was May 3rd was the fire in 2016, May 3rd, May 4th. It's still to date the biggest fire in Canadian history by far. So the entire city, 100,000 people all had to get evacuated. One road in, one road out. Somehow nobody died, but several thousand homes burned, homes, factories, cars. So this is no regular wildfire smoke. This is a toxic soup like you can't really imagine, because every chemical in every house burnt to a crisp. You would drive through neighborhoods and subdivisions and all you see is chimney stacks. So we went there, and for the first, everybody was evacuated. So they weren't living in town. We would go there. The city was just blanketed in smoke. And people don't talk about this, but after a really bad wildfire, the smoke can stay in the valley, in the area, for several months. It gets in the soil, it gets in the water, it's part of the ecosystem. So normal fire restoration cleaning protocols were designed for a kitchen fire, for a dryer vent fire, for something, a heater tips over, a cigarette butt, things like that. They weren't designed for this. We weren't dealing with fires. We were dealing with smoke damage. So homes were just intoxicated in smoke for a month. Very, very, very toxic smoke. So we had hexavalent chromium, PAH, which is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. It was just insane. So what we had to do to clean these homes was literally we would clean, and like there was no book on this type of, there's no protocol here. So we would literally have to, first we would clean everything, insurance wants you to start from that point. But we ended up having to replace every piece of furniture, gone. Every piece of clothing, even after cleaning it multiple times, it still couldn't be cleaned properly. Every soft material basically was gone. What's a soft material? If it can get wet, it can absorb air. So carpets, clothing, insulation in the attic, everything. And anything that was porous. So if you had like a dining table, like a finished table like this is fine. But if the bottom was open, porous material, garbage, because it absorbed all that toxic smoke. So we would clean these homes, and we would bring in intense industrial air scrubbers. We would do a very, throw everything out, do a deep, deep clean, so this family could reoccupy their home. We would test the air extensively before we would give a green light for the family to move back home. So one example is a family, the mom's name was Tanya, most vivid by far. We gave them the green light. We tested the air. They moved back home. Within a week, we got a phone call. Baby's in the hospital, back on a nebulizer. We're like, what do you mean? We tested the air. It was all good. We go back to the house. We test the air again. And the house was indeed contaminated off the charts because the house was clean, but the outdoor environment was still very polluted. So the outdoor air came back inside yet again, recontaminated the home. I called the insurance company. I was like, hey, guys, we have a big problem. Tanya's little baby is back in the hospital. What do you want us to do? What can we do? My proposition is that we put the family back up in a hotel back in Edmonton for a month or two until the outdoor air is clean. Then let's clean their house and bring them back in. Otherwise, what are we doing here? We're just going to keep cleaning and it's going to keep getting re-infiltrated. Insurance said no. Basically, like, homeowner signed off. The check is on its way to you. Like, we don't clean twice. I'm like, whoa. And, this was unprecedented. Like, this multi-contamination event. Normally, you remove the mold, clean the house, green light. We're all good for now. Not this time. So what we did is I'm like, and we got paid very well for this catastrophe work. So I'm like, there's no way we could just like leave and say, hey, bye, Tanya, like, have fun. So what we ended up doing that seemed practical at the time was we were using what's called air scrubbers. So imagine somewhere between a subwoofer and a photocopier, giant air purifiers that were like 150 pounds. So that's what we were using for restoration work. So we brought 3 of those in the house, 3 or 4. And then after a few hours, the air quality was actually fine again. The good news is the air quality was fine. The bad news is these are loud, ugly machines. But for the catastrophic event, it was bearable. They were very happy to have the noise in their home. But so this kept happening basically, where we had to use our industrial machine, leave it in people's homes for a couple of months. So I was like, these are like multi-$1,000 commercial grade machines. We can't just be keeping these things everywhere. So I'm like, let's just try to go to Best Buy, Home Depot, buy a bunch of portable air purifiers, 5 or 6 of them, leave them in the house, let them just keep it as a gift. It's way cheaper than running all these industrial air scrubbers around. And that seemed like a good idea. However, we brought them in, all the brands that you could imagine. I'm not going to name brands, but all the general Amazon, Best Buy, $200, $300, $400 air purifiers is the type of products that we were trying. We put it in, and within like 12 to 14 hours, the air quality was terrible again. So I never knew anything about portable air purifiers. I just knew our industrial air scrubbing machines. So the analogy I use now to describe it, so basically these little air purifiers were doing nothing to keep up with this type of problem. So the analogy I use is it's like trying to heat a bathtub with a kettle. So a kettle is fantastic at heating water for a cup of tea. But if you try to heat your bathtub with a kettle, the water is going to cool off, or even more exaggerated, try to heat your bathtub, your swimming pool with a kettle. You can't. For your shower and bathtub and dishwasher, you need a water heater. They're large kettles. To heat a swimming pool, you have a large gas-fired giant water heater because that's the size, you can't haul your boat with a golf cart. You need a truck. So I'm like, whoa, these little air purifiers are not doing the trick. This is not a suitable replacement for these air scrubbers, not even 6 or 7 of them. For example, a big air scrubber could be 1200 CFM. So at least 600 CFM. So that's like the horsepower of the air purifier. A Dyson, for example, is 87. And that's at full speed. That's at full speed. At low speed, it's like 15 or 20 probably. So a lot of portable air purifiers, they're cute ideas, but if you really looked at the sizing, they're for closets. They're for teeny tiny areas of dust. They weren't designed for this type of situation. And I remember I went to one customer's house named Angela. We had our big air scrubbers there, and she unplugged it. I'm like, Angela, what are you doing? Your air's horrible. She's like, I know. And she didn't have a super sick baby, but she was like, it's just so loud and so ugly. And then, so because of the way I wasn't trying to create the next best air purifier at all, I was trying to create the first industrial air scrubber that was quiet, that was pretty, that was effective. And I was only trying to create it for wildfire smoke. So I'm like, I called the restoration business sad money, because you do this whole cleanup and then the house is filled with smoke again. What problem did we really solve? The fire's coming back next year. So I'm like, when I saw that, people were willing to, they want clean air, but not at the expense of noise pollution, not at this large photocopier living in their kitchen, in their living room. So I'm like, you know what? The real solution that we need for wildfire smoke, we need a machine that's quiet, that's pretty, that can run all year long. But when the wildfire smoke is here, it can crank up and deal with this. So at first, I tried to create a whole home HVAC style system. I spent a couple years doing that, and it was just not the way to go. I really wanted it to be, it would be so nice. You just plug it into the furnace, let the HVAC system do everything. It didn't work at all. And I tried everything on the market. I really wanted that to be the solution. The problem with that was, what happens is energy efficiency is completely at odds with environmental health. So, you want your house to be tight. You want to seal everything in, which is a lot of the problem here. But so you want your furnace turning on and off to heat and cool. Ideally, it runs as minimal as possible. Mm-hmm. And so whenever that furnace is not running, the air purifier is not cleaning. That was problem 1. Problem 2 was you couldn't focus the cleaning efforts. So your crawl space is being cleaned as much as your baby's bedroom. That doesn't make any sense. And then your furnace was really designed to heat and cool your home. So when you try to turn something into something it's not, when you add a big heavy filter on it, like a MERV 13 or a big whole home HEPA, you choke the whole HVAC system down. You blow out the motor, you blow out the fan. It's just not the way it was designed. It's like you could turn your camper van into a home. It's nice for the weekends, but try to live in a van with your whole family. It's not going to be the same as a house. So I started to travel all over Asia because Asia has some of the worst air quality. Los Angeles is not much better. Bangkok, Mexico City, Hong Kong, Beijing. So I went to go see the areas where the air quality was worse. And in a lot of parts of Asia, if you go to a restaurant or meet the teller at a bank, there's air purifiers, big ones, everywhere. When you go to the mall, they have air purifier stores. Because the air is so much worse, the way now in the US, Canada, we've learned that tap water is not good. Pond water is not good. We have to filter our water. Luckily, in water, it's easy. It comes in through one pipe. We filter our water. It's easier to control the source. We haven't yet reached that level of awareness in this part of the world in terms of our air awareness, which is the most important thing. So it's important for me to kind of give that background context on, I was approaching Jaspr from let's build something that's this effective machine for mold restoration, flood, fire, but it has to be quiet and it has to be beautiful. So that was the entry point, that we were not cute apps, not fancy features, not how small and cute can we make it. It had to be a certain size to get the job done. So I can go more into the details and what makes it different. But what's really important was to communicate the perspective we had and why we even approached it this way in the first place.
I wish I'm actually more mad at myself for not asking the appropriate questions that would have prompted that regardless, because that's like essential, I feel like, to hear all of that. That's a crazy story about the family with the baby. And then, it's tough on one end because I think it actually gives there's like a lot of skepticism on our show, especially about Western medicine and all this stuff. And I understand this isn't the exact same thing, but this is why it's always tougher, right? Because you are clearly a good man who cares about people. And when there's unprecedented things that happens, as you said, people just mess up by mistake, right? You did tell this family and you guys told this family this is good to go, and it was good to go, but it's like, oh, by the way, the air's so toxic, we didn't think that through. It's like, holy crap, like things can happen. But I also think it's these situations and stories that are otherwise actually very sad. It's kind of crazy to try to comprehend what you had to witness or what these people had to experience in this town where, it's small. It's like you said, remote. It's kind of, people know each other to some degree in the local areas. And now it's just decimated from what occurred. And then they go back to the ones that can, and man, they have to deal with this whole new set of problems. So sometimes it's these devastating stories, whether it's personal health challenges or larger things like that, that end up creating the best stuff. So no, I appreciate the context there. I'd still love to dive into
Sure.
what makes Jaspr different. I think you've already alluded to some of these things, and I'm recalling stuff that Jason was bringing up about how, I was aware that it can kind of change itself based on how much is going on in the air, right? Like similar to the concept of, I have the heater behind me today, that's on instead of the air conditioning. And yes, that's going to change based on the temperature of the room. So I'd love to dive into all those features. Let's just talk about Jaspr itself and what does make it different.
And like you said there, sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Mm-hmm. It's like people try to make energy efficient homes and ended up making these airtight little boxes with tons of VOCs. Like, and with mold, they used to call it the mold rush, and there was a saying called "mold is gold." It's when a lot of folks probably in your community, you hear about the ERMI test and the aerosol. And Jason's stuff is pretty good, really good, because a lot of people overhype it. Some people downplay it, like you did with your first place, until you had a lived experience, and then other folks, it's like, let's tear apart the whole house. I call it whack-a-mold. Because I always tell friends, if you ever want to get out of a lease, call me, I'll come over, I'll find the mold. I've never been to a house where I couldn't find some mold. It's inside, it's outside. I mean, Jason's already educated you guys enough on mold, so I won't do a repeat of whatever he told you about. But typically, a lot of the diagnostic tools were created to either be false negative or false positive. And then, as practitioners are trying to get educated, it's difficult to kind of separate what works here. So with Jaspr, what makes it very different is, because of that origin, because I was trying to make it to tackle more severe things, naturally it's larger. It's quite a bit bigger than a regular air purifier. So it's a little bit less than 3 feet tall. It's about 31 inches tall. 30 inches tall. It's 12 inches in diameter. If anyone's ever been to like an airport or a gym, the CrossFit gyms have a lot of those like big ass fans. They're like these, the brand's actually called Big Ass Fan, and they're these huge fans that are silent, but they're moving so much air that they're like 20 feet in diameter. So because of the size of the fan, it can move so much airflow. So because I was creating Jaspr for wildfire smoke, I never thought like we'd be having this conversation or that I would be helping people with sleep, with allergies. I never thought that in a million years. I just specifically made it for wildfire smoke. And when COVID got launched, started, it happened, whatever, March 2020, we ended up selling exclusively to doctors and dentists because they needed something that was pretty, effective, could reassure their patients. And then the patients, the hygienist would rave about it as a means to explain why their dental practice is the healthiest, cleanest, safest dentist in town. And then mom's like, hey, do they sell these for families? I have an asthmatic child. And they're like, I don't know, call Jaspr. So for the first 3 years of the business, we didn't have e-commerce. The only way to buy a Jaspr was request a quote or call for a free consultation of your air. We were basically like a air consultant who happened to have a product. And then only February of 2023, so just over a year ago, did we like, will people buy this thing online? Turns out, yes. Especially if you partner up with a lot of really great health and wellness experts. So brass tacks, features, specs, that kind of stuff. So because it's bigger, it can move a lot more air. So where I told you about that Dyson that caps out at about 87 CFM, Jaspr gets to about 430. But what's actually more important than the peak, because whenever people talk about square footage coverage and things like that, they're always talking as if the product, the air purifier, is on full speed. But usually the air purifier is going to be on the lowest speed 99% of the time. So it's like, how much air do you move on your lowest setting? So for us, it's about 120 CFM. So on our lowest setting, we're moving more air than a little air purifier would on its highest setting. And we're still silent, because if you make you could have the best air purifier in the world, but if it's loud, if it's hideous, it's not going to fit into people's life. So we have no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, which allows our EMF to be basically nothing. You know, there's a motor. So once you get about an inch off the screen, there's no traces of EMF. So no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. That was a big deal for us. We make Jaspr out of steel, cold rolled steel, not plastic. Because we're like, if we're polluting the outside air to fix the indoor air, are we really solving anything here? So because it's made out of steel, it's essentially infinitely recyclable. And because of that, that brings us to our lifetime warranty. So if anyone's Jaspr ever breaks, what we do is we ship them a new Jaspr the next day. They take the new Jaspr out, they put the old Jaspr in the box, we give them a prepaid shipping label, and then we schedule a UPS to pick it up off their porch 9 a.m. the next day. I hate, as a customer, when I have a product under warranty and they make me jump through hoops to fix their broken product, and they make me feel like a liar. Like, send me this video, these pictures, do you have the receipt, do you have the box? No, I did not keep your giant box. And I did not keep the receipt either. Right. I have the product, I bought it, here's the email, like, are you gonna help me or not? So I kind of, with Jaspr, the reason we don't have investors or anything is I wanted to create the business that I wanted to be a customer of. So by building it with steel, by having that warranty, it's very expensive for us to replace someone's Jaspr with a new unit. Very expensive. So the onus, anytime that there's an issue, we take the old one apart, we figure out what went wrong, we improve our manufacturing process, we improve our inspection process, because it would literally put us out of business if the units are having issues. So the other thing is we don't have a sales department or a customer service department. We only have a education department. So like Justin, who's our main point of contact, and we're slowly building out our team, he's tested the air of 5,000 homes. Much like Jason Earl went from air restoration and air consulting to a test your home solution, Justin has tested over 5,000 homes. So we're only going to hire either healthy home experts, health and wellness experts, people who are health, wellness, and home experts. And then we just talk to customers. So if somebody calls us about mold or how many do I need or what's up with this situation, we will always have the time to go one-on-one with people and educate them. So that's part of the experience, as well as not just saying, buy it and we're this faceless organization. No. If someone emails us, we'll send them a voice note, we'll hop on a call. We're very, very educational. And then in terms of the product, so, a product is only as good as the company that supports it. So if we don't have a great warranty, if we don't have a good service, we're also constantly trying to evolve our filter. So conventional wisdom would tell you to have the best filter possible. But what is really a best filter? Because when you see typical air purifier, they talk about two things: square footage and 99.9999997% of particulates. All that means is per pass, how many particles get filtered. So if I have an air purifier that was the size of this cup, it could still be 99.99999% per each pass, but it's not going to be bigger. It's not going to be able to filter the air in anything more than a car. Maybe not even, because it's too small. So, if you look at a car and you're 0 to 60, you could have a 0 to 60 that's really high on your remote control car, but that thing can't hold people. So it's really important to not and I really am resisting the temptations that the market wants you to do and talk about these percentages a ton, because it's not that. So a really good quote I love is, would you rather have 99% of $1 or 95% of $5? So if you decrease the effectiveness of your filter from, a H15 HEPA to like an H12 to a lower grade HEPA, all of a sudden you go from 99.9999 to like 99.96, 99.95. You don't lose much in efficiency, and you can like double your airflow. So now all of a sudden you're cleaning your air 2 and 3 and 4 times as much as that other air purifier is cleaning it once. So we're always doing real world examples. And most of these third-party lab studies for air purifiers are honestly complete bullshit. If those companies gave you a bad result, nobody would hire them for third-party data. So when you go to all these labs to test your filter, they're basically trying to reverse engineer it of how can we give you the best result possible, which is why I don't lean into these lab studies. And if you really dig into the lab studies, often, like I said, the CFM is like 20 to 100. They often run the experiments at like 1 CFM. A Kleenex would be HEPA. If you barely blew on it, nothing's getting through. So there's a lot of this like sketchy marketing in the air purifier space that I really don't like. So what we do is we do mostly like real world examples. So I'll use Jason's cassettes, for example, and go into a moldy room and then turn on a Jaspr for an hour and test it before and after and say how much less mold is there, or use a particle counter. Or if people are using Aura, Whoop, Fitbit, Apple Watches, or whatever to track their sleep, let's take someone who's been tracking their sleep for years, put a Jaspr in their bedroom, and see how much their sleep score goes up, see how much better they feel. Truthfully, air quality should be more like water or food. If you eat a McDonald's burger, you're going to feel really bad afterwards. You don't need a lab data to tell you about the nutritional information. You know how you feel. If you start drinking all tap water after you've gone to filtered water, you taste the chlorine. Same thing with clean air. If you have really good clean air at home, you're not going to have any dust on any surfaces. Dust is a symptom of bad air indoors. There's no dust outside on the street. Why? Because we have the UV light from the sun. We have wind, which also creates hydroxyl radicals. But when we trap all that outside, we put our house in a little Tupperware box, and the air is dirty, we get dust. Dust is not a normal thing. So if your air, like we basically have a dust-free house. Dust is a good indicator that you have an air problem. So when someone does invest in upgrading the clean air in their home, it's a really good time to also do a deep clean of your surfaces, get your ducts cleaned, because now that you're cleaning the air, you should really almost have no dust. So that's a big one. So fan speed, much better. Service, support, much better. Metal construction, better. And then it's the sensor. So it's the sensitivity. So if I'm cooking, and people would often think, oh, we only need our range hood when we're cooking bacon at high heat. So when you are cooking at high heat, all kinds of chemical compounds get formed at these high heats. When you take fat, even if you have a non-stick pan, you can have a cast iron with asparagus and grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and you can still really, really pollute your air quality. Good to eat. Cooking indoors is a new thing. We didn't used to have these tight boxes with range hoods in kitchens. So the best thing is cook outside or open your windows when you cook. The thing is, for practical life, it's hard to fully mitigate sources. So our sensor is so sensitive that if someone's cooking asparagus with olive oil and they have a 3,000 square foot house and all the doors are shut and their baby's sleeping upstairs in the nursery, within about 1 to 2 minutes, the Jaspr in the bedroom is going to be red, critical, and running. So I don't really think about Jaspr as an air purifier. I think about it more as a decentralized whole home air filtration system. So if you think about a Sonos speaker, back in the day, if you want music, you'd buy this big loud speaker. It would either be like way too loud in that room or I can't hear it at all in the other room and maybe the bass is shaking me. And then along came Sonos and now other speakers have followed in its path. So you can have reasonable volume music in all areas of the home. So Jaspr is really more of a decentralized whole home cleaning solution because unlike water that comes in through a tap, the air is coming through every crevice in your home, your doors, your window, your attic, your dryer vent, everywhere. Your anything that is open to the outside, your house is leaky, that's where you get the air that you can even breathe from. It's coming in. So you need more of a decentralized solution and ideally a very smart, responsive one. So if it's wildfire smoke, if people are using non-green products like your regular Lysols, Clorox, or your regular shower shampoo stuff, your Jasper's kicking up all the time. So not only is it about cleaning the air, it's about the education to realize, whoa, this triggers my air. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive. Or if someone has a humidifier, Jasper's going crazy. Well, what is it? We've aerosolized all the water and all the particulate in that water that we may not have. So we helped on the humidity side, but we now created a particulate situation. So it really comes down to and then last but not least, so you have performance, which is power. You have smart sensitivity, so it adapts to your environment. You have the really good service and support. It's made out of steel. And then little features. So I used to hate when air purifiers had a sleep mode because if you want to turn off that bright, annoying blue light in your bedroom, you push the sleep button and then the light goes off, but the air purifier goes down to like 5%. So it's like the only thing you're putting to sleep is the air purifier. You bought this thing because you wanted to clean your room at night. But the only way to turn off the light is to also turn off the fan speed. So I did no market research with Jaspr. None. I just created the product that has a former wildfire restoration guide that I really wanted in my house. And then it's beautiful. It's not this obnoxious bright plastic. And because it's steel, it absorbs light. Plastic reflects light, metal absorbs light. So if you put I'll just talk about Air Doctor, for example, because it's actually not a bad machine. A $1,000 premium model, it's good. Pretty on par with Jaspr. Where it sucks is that the intangibles, the service, the response, and then the sensitivity. And then because it's this bright white plastic and it has two sides for air intakes, so you actually have to keep it like several feet off your wall. And you have to vacuum the pre-filter every month. With Jaspr, you change the filter twice a year, takes 30 seconds.
Well, that's
and
nice.
because we have a 360-degree intake, put it in the corner, put it behind the couch, hide it anywhere you want. It doesn't really matter because it's going to capture the air from all of the sides. So we made something that's going to like blend in with your decor. Like, you could buy a Walmart kettle for $19. That's like this black plastic thing that you got to turn on and off. Or you could get like an $80, $90, $120 kettle because you're like, you know what? This is sitting on my kitchen and I want it to be aesthetically pleasing. I want it to be nice to use. So we made something it's functional, it looks good, it works good. And if you don't really handle all of those things, then you're not really creating a solution. So there's my fairly long-winded answer on like everything that went into it and how we made it and why we made it. And there you have it.
Mike, you're what I call, don't worry about the answer, because you're what I call the perfect guest, because I just ask a question that's, I think half intelligent, nothing profound. And then the person's just able to run with it and their passion and the knowledge they've collected just kind of guides this awesome show along. So no, this is perfect to me. I just wish we had more damn time. So one thing I do want to ask about is, well, I actually have a comment first. Sometimes the best market research is just figuring out what we wouldn't like, because as you're talking about all these features, like even the light thing, it seems so stupid, but it is the biggest pain in the butt when you actually have to deal with it. So I totally agree that like these little things that annoy you are usually things that annoy a lot of people, or certainly there's at least some overlap. So one question I wanted to ask though, before we have to hop off, and of course we'll talk about where people can find all this. You mentioned Oura Ring, you mentioned Whoop. So clearly it sounds like you've been involved with people who are tracking different things. I'd love to know to the degree that you're able to share, maybe like any testimonials or stories of someone who maybe their sleep was bad or their health wasn't doing too well, and then they added Jaspr to their home and they found that to be either maybe just objectively, maybe through the data, or even subjectively in terms of how they felt, saw improvement in those areas. I'd love to hear about that.
So I have a couple quick ones. Number one, a friend named Gareth in Toronto, his average aura score went from a 61 to a 91 right away. And it's not that Jaspr was this magic wand. Well, it almost was in this situation. It's because he had mold. He was in an apartment building. He didn't know that there was ambient. This is the type of mold you can't smell, you can't see, you can't detect. It's just in the building. So by going from breathing a ton of mold spores to none, completely changed the game for him. So that was a big one on the sleep side. And then broadly, the biggest thing, so what I used to do is I'd actually give people 1 week free trials with Jaspr locally. And we only ever once had somebody who didn't keep it. It's like, hey, put it in your bedroom. We're coming to pick it up next Tuesday at 3:00. If you want to buy it before we come, do it. And what we would tell them is on day after 4 nights of sleeping with it, unplug it and see how you feel. And people would have panic attacks because once you start breathing really clean air, you realize how dirty your air was before. So the average bedroom has about 800,000 particles in it floating around between 0.3 microns and 10 microns. So this is everything from mold, dust mites, allergens, pollen, insect parts, smoke, carpet material, dead skin cells, all the stuff that's floating in the air that we can't see. And typically in about an hour, we can get that number from 800,000 to about 20,000. So about a 90% reduction in just stuff you're breathing. So, we learn at a young age what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I learned this is not true with a lot of stuff. I know when a boxer gets knocked out, they're more susceptible to being knocked out unconscious in the future. And with these big allergy exposure events, mold, pollen, dust mites, all these things, if you have a big exposure event, you get beat down and you get more and more and more and more sensitive. And now a little thing that wouldn't have affected you dramatically affects you. I was on Ben Azadi's podcast. I believe he's FDN. And he actually had a really good analogy about a cup of water where, if the cup is full and it overflows, you get a lot of symptoms. So to bring it back to a simple example, is often people who struggle with bad seasonal allergies or any allergies, when you can create a bedroom that's a clean air sanctuary, the bad news is we spend 95% of our time indoors. The good news is we spend 95% of our time indoors. So we can really control this environment. So a bedroom in a home, it's not too huge. We're not talking about a building or a warehouse here. So we can have filtered water. We can have clean air. It doesn't break the bank. So if you have really clean air in your bedroom and now your body, if it's in defense mode, there's usually more pollen in your house than outside. It comes in, it's embedded in your carpets and your bedding and everything, and it can't get out. So what happens is when you're sleeping at night, your body's still playing defense with the pollen, with the mold, with the insect parts, all that stuff. So when you go out during the day, you have a hard time sleeping, and then you go out in the day, you're just beat down. Your body can't get parasympathetic. It can't really heal. It can't rest. It can't recover. But when you can have super clean air at night, your clean air sanctuary, your sleep sanctuary, you can't sleep without air. It's the only thing sustaining you at night. So when you're able to sleep in this clean air sanctuary, your body can actually rest and recover, and your Mario health indicator bar can increase. And then during the day, because you've been able to rest and recover at night, the thing that's blown me away, and Austin has some of the worst cedar allergies in the country, people's outdoor allergies almost go away completely, because they're able to recover at home. A few hours here and there, they go for a walk, they're in their car, they're fine. So that's been the biggest, most exciting breakthrough for me by far, is that example of watching people's autoimmune stuff and their allergens and everything heal by just actually being able to heal and recover at night instead of just playing defense. So that's my best example for you, for sure.
Mike, this is excellent. Where can people find this? And then I'm curious, sorry if you don't, I don't want to put you on the spot with it, but are there—
You can put me on the spot anytime, any place.
Are there relationships here that practitioners can develop? He's like, I have clients, so if I wanted them to do this, can I work out some partnership with you? So just where can the general consumer find it? And then the question about the—
So this is general consumer. Go to our website, jaspr.co. Follow us on Instagram. We're starting to do way more educational stuff on Instagram at Jaspr Co, Jasprco. Thank you, Tracy. The other really big, so now for the practitioner piece, which is the big piece. So we don't run Google ads. We don't run Facebook ads. I'm here to build relationships with health and wellness practitioners. My desire is to educate you guys so you can educate your patients. Also, we have something called the life-changing guarantee. If anybody buys it and it's not a complete no-brainer in 60 days, we give them all their money back. We take the product back. We want customers for life who are helping. If we're not helping you, let's get the Jaspr to someone else's home. From a practitioner standpoint, we deeply desire to educate you guys and then partner with you. So if someone has an in-person clinic, like a physical real-life clinic, we'll work with you to get a Jaspr for basically cost in your clinic and give you some good signage about the air quality in your space so you can feel it yourself. Get it in your homes, in your bedrooms, because once you see when you're cooking that asparagus or that grass-fed, grass-finished steak on your cast iron pan and you see it fire up across the house and you start sleeping better, then you can really talk to your patients from a place of a lived knowing, a true experience. And that's what I believe it's all about. But yeah, we deeply desire to partner up with you guys on the affiliate side, work together like that, because we want to work through you guys to be able to get Jaspr into the hands of people who need it most. The way people think about clean food, clean water, Jaspr is here as your air partner to help you get your patients clean air. So whether that's educational support, answering questions for your patients, doing things like this for your community, helping with email, with education, with studies, like we're here to support you guys and as much as you want us to. And yeah, we're looking, so feel free to reach out to us through FDN, like however you want to do that. But we're here to support the individual practitioners with the education on clean air, the products, the solutions, and help it be a revenue stream and help your patients with just what I believe is the easiest, laziest way to have game-changing results for your patients. Clean air, you just plug it in, you turn it on, you change your filters twice a year. That's it. So yeah, this is exactly why we're here, for this type of relationship.
Awesome, man. All right. So the signature question to finish up the show, and I might guess what you will use as the answer, but I don't know. You seem like a guy that you could throw me a curveball here. So it's okay regardless what the answer is. The question is, if you could get all of our listeners to do one thing for their health, whether that's force them to start doing one thing, or you can force us all to stop doing one thing, what is the one thing Mike gets us to do?
Ooh, broadly, I'm a stop guy. So I'm going to say stop breathing polluted air in your bedroom at night where you sleep is what you should stop doing. Whether that means moving to Costa Rica and opening your windows and going to a place where the air quality is excellent and you don't need an air purifier, that would be the best. If you can move to the rainforest, you should do that. But for everybody else who's in an urban or a rural environment and has bad air, you should stop breathing toxic polluted air at night when you sleep. So if for anybody, the solution happens to be Jaspr, we're here to serve you, but do something. Whether it's getting another solution, it doesn't really matter, but stop breathing bad air in your bedroom is the thing that I would suggest people stop doing.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on today. This was